Welcome back to the Flow Friday Sports Show here on Flow FM. It's time to commence segment 2 of Being Barossa United, and I've got with me one of the figureheads of the club and, of course, our senior content producer here at Flow FM, Rikki Lambert. Rikki, good to be with you again. How you doing?
All right. I don't know if that figurehead one works. Something head anyway.
It's good to check in with you again. How's the club doing? Week 2 of our segment. Just fill us in on a little sort of vague rundown of what's gone on in the last weekend.
Well, we've had first contact with the enemy. In terms of those who come from Adelaide and other parts beyond, in most of our fixtures, the men still waiting for official competition, but they did get a cup match under the belt to start that side of the competition.
All right, well, we're going to talk about the men's and women's senior sides, focusing on a little more on them this week in our segment. So firstly, just tell us about the men. Who is the coach and how did they get on last season?
Well, the men's side have appointed Connor Rawkins, who was the captain of the side, as also a captain coach. Connor's a cracker player, and I'll always be proud of a game Connor Rawkins played on Adelaide Atletico's former Adelaide United star, and the name's Marcus Flores. And he gave Marcus a bath, actually, which was really pleasing to see. That was on our home turf at Barossa United. He's a former Johnny Warren medal winner, Marcus Flores. So you run into that sort of thing in football, let's say, occasionally. But yeah, Connor is the captain and the coach. And also some famous names from the Barossa United club include the Stevens brothers, Dominic and Leo. Leo I call the weapon. In fact, in the cup match, you'll hear about the weapon in a minute. But a big signing for the club is another Federico, another Argentinian that's come into the side.
There we go. Well, a bit of an Argentine flavour about the show this week, Rikki. I just want to find out more about what Connor thought about coming up against Flores. I used to know Marcos quite well, and the phrase that comes to mind when I think of Flores is form is temporary, class is permanent. So getting to handle someone like Flores is no short order.
Well, I don't think he was at his fittest, Marcus Flores, when he played, and actually he was trying to use a little bit of deception. He'd point to his teammates and go, run there, and he'd throw it in the opposite direction. So he was trying all the tricks in the book, but no, that was a good performance against Atletico a couple seasons ago. But they did play a team called SBS, which is a shorthand for something from the subcontinent, an Indian-based team, and they won 3-2 in the cup match, the A grade.
Yeah, there we go. I've just got visions of the great late Les Murray and Craig Foster showing up in my mind there. Yep. Just on the men, I feel like with Barossa United, from an outsider looking in, Rikki, the obstacles of travel and time shortages often do come up for those that lend their hand as players at Barossa United. So in terms of prioritising, yes, we want to, in an ideal world, you want to win everything. But priority-wise, is the club sort of used to looking at one competition as its sort of predominant kind of favourite way to go about things for a year?
The focus is very much on the league. The cup is always challenging for the team, and the big word in the Barossa is vintage. But the vintage is very late this year. This is the grape harvest, and that takes a lot of people offline because they work at wineries. They are the major employer in the area. So there was a forfeit for the B grade, not by our team, by the opposition in the cup. So both teams have advanced to the next round of the cup, which hasn't happened for some time. So yeah, look, the men are looking good. Their regular season that they really play for only starts after Easter.
There we have it. I just want to ask, in terms of pathways from the juniors up, is the senior setup at the Barossa United club sort of linked to being one whereby if you're showing a lot of promise in the under 15s, under 16s, you're going to get fast-tracked and you're going to get seen in that senior setup pretty quickly?
Well, a good example of that in the men's squad this year is the name of Campbell Nowak. Now, Cam is still, I think he might have just turned 18, but he's shown a lot of promise through the junior setup. There's a number of names in that B-grade team like Sean Bean, James Brawley, the Munzberg brothers, Joshua and Lachlan. They are juniors that have come up through the ranks. In fact, we had 3 teams last year. We've consolidated that into 2 just because we got a bit stretched thin trying to field 3 teams. So there are a lot of young faces in that side. Malachi Williams is another one who's one of the younger names in the men's side. But then you got veterans like Cameron Gleese, last year's best and fairest winner. He scored 2 in that 3-2 win in the Cup. And Alex Worrell, the club vice president, the old warhorse, he's still going around and has some cameos with the over 35s as well.
There we have it. Let's look ahead to what things look like in the next few weeks for the men. So got that cup game out of the way. League starting sometime soon?
After Easter, yeah. Whereas, for instance, the women, they had their first match on the weekend. They played on Sunday, and my daughter played in that match, so I was a proud onlooker. They went down 2-1 to Para Hills East.
It looks like Faith's going to be one of the all-time cap winners for Barossa United at this point in time, Rikki.
If she stays in the district, potentially so. She was involved in the scrambly goal that Alina Nuisinen scored in the 16th minute of that match, but Hills Easties were too good, pegging 2 back just before half-time, and then it was a pretty dogged second half. Barossa couldn't get back into the match.
All right, let's talk about the senior women's side, Rikki. So we've got a fair amount of players in this squad. Tell us about their sort of history and who's coaching the ladies this year.
Well, Chris Smith, who's a former president of the club, is the coach of the women's side, and his daughter used to play in the women's team, but he's stuck with the side. We've got a good mix of younger and I'll just say older players. We've got the likes of Shannon Kunst and as well as Karen Moday, who are great veterans and great leaders in the side. But then you've got some young faces like Ebony Triandafilides. Rosa Meddy came up from my under-15 side last year, Ebony Triandafilides as well. Some good juniors and some really great talent out there as well. Sasha Reynolds-Rowe was one of my best and fairest in under-15s, and she's smashing into players in the women's comp. In fact, we had a 12-year-old debut for the women's side last week. A young lady by the name of Taylor Bullock. Taylor Bullock got her first start and did very well. Showed a lot of toe, a lot of pace against the older ladies.
Seems to be the case in Federation Soccer or football, whichever one you want to call it, in South Australia, whereby in the senior women's setups, it seems we have so much more youth. Do you know why that is? I mean, because you coach at a youth level in the girls' side of things at the club, so you'd have as good an idea as anyone might about this. Why is that the case?
Well, it's pretty simple, I think, is that it gets incredibly hard, whatever code you're involved in, to sustain an under 16, 17s, 18s or Colts type of side, because young people get jobs or they get other pursuits. In fact, I won't name names, but there were a couple who'd been partying the night before these games happen on a Sunday, and sometimes it's hard to get the side to front up. So the practical reality for the clubs is they simply go, well, we're going to just consolidate those into senior ranks, which can be confronting for parents when you've got a kid who might be in maybe year 10 or year 11 at school and they're up against adults. But it's been the system that blooded some very good young players over the past, regardless of what code it is. So it gets incredibly hard to sustain say an under-17s team. We almost got there running a girls' side this year at Barossa United, but we're just a few players short. But that means those girls that I mentioned, some of those names I mentioned, get a run in the women's team, and they're definitely holding their own.
All right, let's take a look at what's making news with junior sides. Rikki, what's top of the agenda as far as the juniors go? The under-14s boys, they look like they had a bit of a day out on the weekend.
A day out at a club you wouldn't expect a day out, Ellis, in WT Burkalla, down by the near the seaside at Glenelg. They are a 6-2 win. Now, this under-14 side is one to watch across the season. Very talented players in this team. Angus or Gussie Roy got a hat-trick in this match. Oscar Crowell, he's playing up a year or two, I think, actually got a goal, and so did Oscar Gill and Dexter Hanton in a 6-2 win. They've got great players there like Maxie Peter, Isaac Rainford, Charlie Butler. Lots of great names who I think you'll see in that men's lineup in years to come if they stay in the district. A very talented squad.
Is it almost a case whereby, you could push this team up a bit because you've got JPL Bs and Cs. So if they're such a good side, as you say, certainly sound very promising, why are they in a JSL?
Well, it's a good question, but we haven't yet played in the JPL pond yet, and you've got to appreciate we're up against Adelaide teams who have got a very big gene pool to draw from. So I say we're doing well, but we're definitely not taking on the likes of an Adelaide City and their youth sides and the amount they can invest in their junior development. Maybe one last one, Ellis. I refereed this match actually between Barossa United and Sturt Lions. It ended up 4-3. They were 4-0 down, the Barossa boys, but they fought their way back into the match.
Wow, well, certainly they did. They did get themselves back into the game, but Sturt, a massive road trip for them, and to get 4 goals ahead, unfortunately, is a little concerning for whoever's in charge of that under-15s boys side.
Well, as far as road trips go, you've got the likes of Port Elliott's Southern Breakers and Port Pirie play in the women's competition as well. So I think they're in the draw. No, Northern Demons are in the women's draw, so the women will come up against them later in the year. In fact, the women coming back to them have a tough fixture against Ingle Farm, who put 8 past Playford City in their next away match. So those young girls are going to get tested in that game.
Yeah, I feel like there's a few parents at the club who'll be wanting to look at updating their vehicles every year.
Get a hybrid or electric vehicle,
Exactly right. Well, Rikki Lambert, he's the man who does plenty of work at Barossa United, the Barossa United Football Club in South Australia. Thanks for joining me on this week's segment of Being Barossa United. We'll see you again next week.